No, yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. I appreciate that. Wow, 21 attendees. This is sick. 60 people usually, like, I think they said they were coming. So I think 20 ones before it starts is pretty good. So, the XR Design Challenge. I am super juiced as a goose, everyone, for this event. I think that the goal of the design challenge, while it's cool to create things and basically get your work seen and, collaborate and compete and getting stuff, you know, that's awesome. But I think that having one of the few XR design channels and getting a lot of work out there to show exactly what's possible in the space is super important in a time like this. We are kind of in the XR industry entering a little bit, I think, what I'm calling our final valley of the XR drought, where I think that there's just so much stuff that current XR headsets haven't been able to play with or show off the power of the product. And soon, like, I think adoption and all this stuff is going to skyrocket. I think it's probably going to take till towards the end of the year, early next year, for us to start climbing out of it. But what I've seen a lot in the design industry, especially around XR design, is that we are again in its infancy. But I think with a group like this, us coming together and creating things, it can show the world that there's a lot of really interesting design that's on the horizon. So I appreciate everyone coming. So yes, cool. So today, let's talk briefly about what we're going to talk about is basically the rules, the point systems. We'll talk briefly about the judges, and we'll talk about this. We'll start off with the theme. Again, if you guys have any questions at all, um, put them in the chat and we'll get to them. So, as you saw in the video, the theme of this whole thing is diegetic design or diegetic UI. I always add the so diegetic UI. And when I initially wanted to do this, I didn't know it was called diegetic. I just thought, like, oh, what are natural affordances and natural signifiers? And this concept is very, very nuanced for a lot of practical applications. It's been around in the video game industry for some time. In that link I posted, it's in our channel, and it's also on my video about the nuances of diegetic design and when it doesn't work and when it does work. But for XR, I don't think that there's been too much done in this space. And I think that this is a really great opportunity to flex those muscles a bit. Pip, what are your thoughts on diegetic design?
Yeah, it's a super fun problem space to try and work in. I've been running a few internal workshops about how to design for hands, and a lot of them. One of the first things I tell people is to try and make things physical. But one of my other designers I work with challenged that, and they were like, "Oh, what about poses and gestures, and how do you do that?" I think a lot of diegetic design is trying to is rooting things so much into a world that it kind of almost makes sense, that you don't have to think about it because it's the only option for you to do, because it's like, of course this thing works that way. Um, yeah, it's a super fun little space to noodle in.
It is a fun little space noodle, and I think that a lot of product designers, traditionally, especially in contemporary like practical applications, what I say to them is like, I want the ability for us to show and not tell. And it seems like a lot of what we do as designers is design menu systems that tell and not show. And I think that if you look at Apple Vision Pro or even Meta, a lot of it is tell and not show. And we have to get over this transitionary like period of taking a traditional medium like a flat panel design and figure out how we can create more natural affordances and experiences that ground us back in our world, which I think is kind of the base promise and the best thing about XR as a medium. And as you see today, like when people get into the headset, famously a Apple designer said, "Yeah, we all know that the Apple Vision Pro is basically an iPad for your head, but we all want to get past that." So like that's kind of where it's at, but we're going to be blowing past that door quite quickly. So diegetic design could be a multiple different things. It could be a use of audio. It could be use of all kinds of different visuals. And so the way that you interpret that and play with that would be super interesting. So let's talk briefly about the judging, shall we? I'm just going to share my screen. And let me expand that. Okay, so boop, 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 boop. So as I stated before, this is going to be running. This needs to be updated. This is going to be running from, I guess, today until the end of June. You can work as a team. Basically, I'm giving them all of July to judges to go through everything. And so we'll get into deliverables, as you've already seen probably in my video. But what I really want to go over is judging criteria, because I think there's a lot of nuances here. So real quick, Suma said, hello, everyone. Super stoked about the competition getting into diegetic design. What are some good examples of diegetic design well implemented in XR? Yeah, that's it. Before I jump into that, I guess, like, look at video games, honestly. I think that's kind of where it's at. If you don't like video games, that's fine. But it's good to do an audit, and you don't have to download the games. There's a lot of really good videos talking about diegetic design. And there are things that it's up to interpretation to a certain extent. Thank you, Melissa. So judging criteria. So core judging criteria. So there's going to be technically 105 points. Okay. So the first chunk of this is 20 points, which is fidelity and performance. So visual fidelity is 10 points and performance is 10 points. So the reason why I have visual fidelity lower than a lot of others, because I personally don't find visual fidelity that important. Especially in this industry, it's more about getting the concept out than having gorgeous visuals, and you don't want to cripple yourself with the gorgeous visuals. I spoke at a Design Buddies conference about 2 weeks ago, and me and like a designer at Meta, she was talking about how everyone's obsessed with craft. Like, how does it look? And she's like, I just want things that work. Like, we're not to the place where everything needs to be hyper crafted, meaning it has to be hyper gorgeous looking. So I think visual fidelity to me was not necessary. I think that I don't want people to focus in on that much, because honestly, at the end of the day, visual fidelity should be the last 10% of a product, depending on what you're making, of course. Then you have performance. Now, performance is a beast. I'm going to be putting out a podcast, starting a podcast, or whatever the hell we're going to call it. And the first thing is going to be all around performance. And the thing about performance, it is the dirty little sibling in your workforce that no one talks about, but it will take around 50 to 60% of your time in your design. But I also don't want people to be crippled by performance. So that is 10 points. So 20 total points there. If you guys have any questions with that, let me know. Then the second category is onboarding. And onboarding can be very, very broad. Your whole entire, if you guys are familiar with onboarding in mobile applications, it basically is teaching people how to use your product, or like the core value prop of your product. And your whole entire experience can be an onboarding process if you want. Onboarding itself is a very unique problem space that is incredibly nuanced. And in XR design, no one's done it right. And I even think in a lot of UI design, like traditional flat design, a lot of people don't do onboarding properly as well. And there's a lot of different theory behind it. So if you come to us with if your whole feature of the whole thing you're releasing to us is just onboarding, that's sick. It's still relative to everything else. So that's 25 points. Then we go ergonomics and accessibility. And so this is a interesting one. So this may be difficult for some people, but I think that ergonomics and accessibility is probably one of the most important things we have to design for as creators and developers. And that's why I've weighted it so high. So basically, part of 20 points of it is you have to have your content be relative to the user, depending on what user puts on your headset. So if I am, 3'2", I put on the headset, the content should be suitable to people that is someone who's 3.2 like feet. If I am 12 feet, it should be suitable for me at 12 feet. If I have 2 arms, it should be accessible to my arms if it's body UI. You need to have your content be rooted to the human form. It doesn't have to follow them necessarily. It just needs to be accessible to them. And then along with accessibility is ergonomics and comfort factor, and that's 10 points. I think that getting comfortable controls in your product is a very difficult problem to solve, as probably Pip knows, doing a lot of like hand UI and stuff like that. And I think that that's why it's 10 points instead of like 20 points, because it's so difficult. But have something that's a little bit easy, like just try to achieve somewhat ergonomic controls and an ergonomic experience within everything. Thank you. What do you mean by performance in the context? Does this mean how we will prototype works? So what I mean by performance is that if I put on the headset, it shouldn't, like, the goal is to keep your frame rate to a minimum of at least 60 hertz or 60 FPS, I should say. And that is and so being able to do that and have it run smoothly on your headset, that's performance. And that is a difficult beast. And, we can get in a whole other discussion. That's what I'm going to be doing next week about what performance is and and the skills needed to actually address it. But performance is just it's a son of a gun. So what I would suggest if you don't understand performance is that do a little bit of research. Don't get discouraged, but understand what target device you're working for, and then go as low poly as you possibly can and reduce the amount of lights and your materials as much as you can. That's just like a very not hyper. It just gets so utterly complicated. So that's what I mean by performance. It just needs to perform on headset. This has always been the bane of everyone's existence. And then for our fourth, which is actually pretty high, core for our fourth criteria, we would need at least one core affordance or signifier. And so, yeah, I'll get to you in a second, Arkan. Awesome. So what I mean by core affordance and signifier is that if you got, how many here, you can throw your hands in the chat. How many here know what an affordance is and what a signifier is? I'll wait. Okay. Okay, everyone's throwing up invite to speak, but yes, I get okay. No, I get it. No, okay, cool. So I don't need to go into deep. So yeah, just if in your project, if you can just really like illustrate that you've thought of one good core affordance and one good signifier, that's great. Again, this can be like the criteria on that is, up to interpretation. I'm assuming you guys are going to hit that, but if you spend a little bit of time on that and polish it, that would be super cool. Arkan, so what level of usability is required? As a designer, I don't have a lot of programming skills to fully realize my designs. So I think that usability in the form of, I need to be like first and foremost, we're going to require a video, which we'll talk about here in a second, from everyone. So it's going to kind of paint the picture of every one of them. And where is it? And it just needs to be usable in a sense where if I download the APK, the Bezier link, or the test flight, I should be able to like use your prototype for the most part. Now there's going to be developers that are going to be a lot more like sophisticated in how they do that, and have the code chops. So like there are a bunch of different frameworks for Unity you can use. You can use Bezier. Bezier has a bunch of things you have to be very conscious of how you do it. But if you just to get the concept across and think it through, I think that's all that matters. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let us know in the Discord. So let's talk about extra credit real quick. So early signups, you get a point, get that. I don't need to go through that. So a critique. So we have 2 active critiques coming up And the goal of the critiques is to get your work in front of us and have us critique it live and give you pointers and stuff like that. I think as designers, one of the best things to do, even if you are a very seasoned designer or principal level, is to get your work in front of other principals or other designers as fast as possible, because we will often miss edge cases, or we may run into walls, and we will start spinning our wheels a great deal. And it's good to get stuff in front of people so you can have a live critique. So as I said, we're going to be doing that. We have 2 sessions. They're in the events. If you want your app critiqued, if you get your app critiqued, that's 4 points. If you want your app critiqued, you have to come to us with a video no longer than 2 minutes. It could be 5 seconds, but it can't be 2 minutes and 1 second. I'm just hitting it over the head with that. And then what I would do from there is spend 4 to 5 minutes per. Now, I think that this is beneficial if you have something to show, because you get active feedback on your work, and it gets good about expressing your work. But like in your video, you should like tell me what problem you're trying to solve. Kind of give me like what you're trying to do, the case study to a certain extent. But it's also good if you're there with a lot of people, because you can see what they're building and their questions may make you have the same questions for yourself. So it's beneficial for everyone. I think it's just good to do active critiques. I actually love critiquing, and it's always a fun time. And you don't have to be worried about anyone being mean or anything like that. Everyone's just trying to learn, and everyone just wants everyone to succeed. Cool. Any questions real quick? I see a bunch of people clacking. Is it okay if the project is made specifically in VR? I have a MetaQuest 2 and doesn't support XR like the examples in your video. Yes, it doesn't need to be in MR. It can be, or whatever the hell. Yes, it can be in VR. The umbrella term of XR is broad. You could technically do it on a phone if you wanted, and that's all. Like, it doesn't really matter. Can you tell me what is the ideal onboarding? Short version is the best. I don't know. Like, the ideal, I don't think there's an ideal, because onboarding is just a method of teaching people how to use something. So, like, it matters what context you're trying to do. Let's say that I have a onboard, there's a couple of different ways you can onboard people. You can basically use audio to walk people through things, but then I would probably, if you brought that to me in a critique, I'd be like, well, some people can't hear, right? But there is no ideal. There's just like, how do you achieve the ability to onboard people onto a concept? And maybe the whole thing is just you picking up a carrot, but in a new, unique way, and you're just onboarding people to pick up a carrot. And you may use like audio, you may use different forms of visual signifiers, you may use like different forms of perspective. There's a lot of different things you can do with onboarding. When do we submit the video for the critique? Oh God, on the day of the critique or before it? That's a good question. I think that, Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, so basically, we can send out a form basically a few days before the critique session is open so that you can submit. So you can submit your video and stuff. Like, you can submit it up until the critique day. But yeah, we're just going to send it out a few days beforehand so then you have time to submit it.
3. Oh, so hopefully that was helpful. We got a couple more people typing. Bezier is a design tool and Unity is a development tool. So how do you evaluate? Unity has a lot of edge cases compared to the design tool. They're both design tools. I would say that Bezier is trying to be more of a design specific tool. Unity, you have the ability to it's just a lot more powerful. It's a game engine. So you can use either one of them. I think a lot of the time what people do with Bezier is they just work on getting a concept across and then go into Unity to build out a more high fidelity version of that. Now, you can use either of them. That's why the fidelity doesn't matter. It's just the idea. right? It's the ability, like, how are you going to onboard people? How are you going to do this? And you could basically use a Bezier thing that's based like a Bezier application that's multiple, and say here's multiple links to different sections, because Bezier's not sophisticated in that way. But you can do that. Just it matters like how you can use anything you want. It has to abide by the rules of ergonomics and accessibility. So any tool that allows you to do that, I think, is all fair game. Is content relative to the active user position or relevant, or is content relevant relative to the active user position relevant for mobile AR? It depends. I think that, like, technically, yes. Mobile is a little bit, I guess, technically all, yes. If you put something on a phone, UI is relative to the user because they're holding the phone. So, like, I think that you can be sly that way. I guess that's true. Thank you.
I guess you've also got to consider where the UI is in space, right? If it's like 3D UI and the content you're looking at, like, you don't want to constantly have your neck craned up staring at stuff and getting a nice little neck crick.
Yeah, and that's why you need to take into consider ergonomics as well. Can you detail the feedback we will get after submitting a challenge from the judges? Only scores in particular category, or everyone get proper feedback and guidance for improvement in the future? I'm assuming it's just going to be like purely just like ratings and scores. It's nice that they're doing this. I think that I will probably talk with them about whoever wins it. I'll probably try to get a couple of them in to talk about the product and talked about, the winner and why they enjoyed it and stuff like that. Do a proper interview on that. We have a lot of people signed up, so to give that many active critiques is just a difficult thing. Is importance given more to general design and the design decisions taken while designing, or for the interaction and functionality with the environment based on the project idea? That's a good question. I think that, like, this is honestly like up to judges. Honestly, I think that a lot of, like, it matters how you want to tackle the problem. Like, design is more than just aesthetics. It's like you can talk about your design, like your design decision making, and you can have like a very specific like construction of something, so the way that you present it to people can exemplify that. I think part of designing is becoming a really good storyteller, and so having a really good video that is a case study. So, like, what you're delivering at the end of this, which is a good segue, is not just a link to an APK or whatnot. It's, you are actually creating a case study, and you guys should think about it in that way. If when you create a case study, you need to tell a story, and sometimes your whole product can be that story. Sometimes it's kind of like you can talk narrative about like how you were thinking through the process. Here's this concept. You may just show the concept, and then you can, in the video, you can just walk us through your design thinking. Like, these are all really good forms. Like, this is just a really good way to create a decent case study. And I don't think that there is a time limit for a case study. Just don't make it an hour and a half long. If you can, like, just be responsible, like 10 to 15 minutes max. That way, someone, one of the judges and myself and whoever at XRD, we can just sit down with, like, a Coke and just watch it and be like, oh, that's a cool little case study. I think that would be really sweet. So let's talk about, like, so deliverables. As I stated before, I don't know where the heck it went. It's somewhere up here. I'll just okay, here. Again, you have to have a video, and then you need, and if you're working on Quest, I'm sure there's other ways to give us an APK, but what we're going to be doing is say, if you just put your APK on SideQuest and send us your SideQuest link. If you're using Bezier, ShapesXR, or anything else like that, you can just give us your URL link. So yeah, that's that. And then if you're doing anything for like Apple, Let us know when you submit, and we're gonna probably need a bunch of we're gonna have to give you guys a bunch of emails for the test flight um, links as well. So that's how we're doing it. I think the hard part with this whole thing is we want to allow as many tools and devices as possible, but that becomes very, very difficult. And that's one of the biggest barriers in XR right now is just the massive amount of devices and inconsistency across them. Suma is asking a question. For new designers, what would be the most important focus area for this competition? Just clarifying, Daniel, Daniel Marqusee, would the final submission be likely case study of? It doesn't need to be that long. I'm just saying you can make it. Just take the opportunity if you want. If you're working on this thing until the 11th hour, you don't just make a video of showing what it is and push it in. I'm saying that you can make it as I'm capping at 5. I would suggest capping around 10 to 15 minutes. And that's, it's kind of like if you're submitting something, if you're submitting a case study to get a job, you don't want to submit a book for someone to watch. You want to send them a very light brief of what you've done. And that's the same thing here. So you don't need to do a ridiculous video on everything. You could, and it would be really good for your portfolio and really good. A trailer basically. Yeah, you can. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions so far? The focus area. What do you mean by that? I'll let Sumi get back to the focus area. AKA Heisenberg. So it's more like using the application made and making it and make a recording of it. Yeah, I mean, yes, I would. You can make the video any way you want as long as it performs in headset. It's I think a lot of these people will try to get the APK on their headset. I think a lot of them are going to rely on video, but make it work on the headset because I will be trying them. The goal is to not make me spend more than 5 minutes on every project trying to get it to work. It's a tall order, I know. Fitz just hopped in. You may answer this, but the idea of making something within Bezier or just an overall XRF, any tool you want. It doesn't have to be in Bezier. A lot of people you can use Unity, you can use shapes, you can use whatever you want. However, again, things like shapes and all these other tools are not oriented. They don't have design. They don't have the ability to design for the body ergonomically in live space. So you would lose a lot of points if an application doesn't do that. It doesn't contort to the body. So I would find a tool that does. Should the idea of diegetic specific? Should the idea be diegetic specific, or can I figure out diegetic parts in the idea I already have? Yeah, do whatever you want, man. The whole thing doesn't have to be diegetic. You just need to address a decent diegetic concept. You can have non-diegetic with diegetic and have this meta diegetic thing. Watch that video because I talk about that. And honestly, it may be better if you just do this meta diegetic thing because sometimes I wanted to do this running text, but I didn't want to have a kiosk or something that someone had to walk up to, or an Apple Vision Pro. There's no locomotion, so I needed to have a non-diegetic thing. And I'm like, oh, that makes complete sense. But I'm using this other diegetic thing here. That may make your app more successful if you think about it, if you explain or if you have that in your concept. What would be a good focus area for new designers? What should we get right before we get into anything else? Oh my God, that's the $1 billion question. It's hard because when I hear beginner, I don't know what that means. I would say if you're just starting, just get a concept out as best as you can. like if this is your first time doing something like this, figure out I think what your goal should be is to block out your time, understand what's possible. You have a month, and just get the concept across the best you can. And I think a lot of designers, when they are new to this whole world, they don't understand the enormity of what they're doing. And that's why you see a lot of applications right now and a lot of stuff that is just like these small little snippets of applications, because it's so hard and it's so difficult. So it's like, just figure out how to do something. I think that's kind of, and if you learn about diegetic stuff and you build something, that's a really good case study for you to show to us and to other people. And it's a really good way to get started. So I hope that's helpful. In the video about UI history, they plotted this great chart on different levels of diegetic UI. Is the goal of this to focus on just the bottom right corner? Not necessarily. You can, as I said, you can be as interpreted as you want with it. I would say that the goal of the whole thing is to expose people to diegetic design and to get people thinking about how to move away from flat UI everything. I think that's the point. As I said, you don't need to focus predominantly on the bottom right. You can do basically all of those things. Like you can do meta, you can do spatial, and you can do non-diegetic, but you need some form of diegetic structure inside of there. So, for instance, like if I am running and I may if I have a running application, I may see on the road a path of feet of where to run, but I may, I may pause and I hit a button and then I open up UI, like that's a window that shows my heart rate. Like you could do both of those things. You don't need to make it purely diegetic. Do you have any advice for anyone with zero experience? What tool would you use if you're going from zero to one to first product? I would say use Bezier. And there's times where I work for Bezier, and there's people in this crowd here that are from Bezier. And look, I'm very realistic about our strengths and our weaknesses, but I think fundamentally I would say that Bezier is the best for someone just trying to put a box in the room and get it on your headset. I think that is fundamental, and it's also a really good way to share and get and play with things. So you have a month to start small, especially if you're, David, if you're diving into Unity. Meta's XR SDK is pretty strong, but also limited when you get more and more customized types of interactions, which I could see happening in diegetic design. Yeah. I mean, Meta's XR SDK is okay. I haven't played with it for a year, so I'm assuming it's gotten better. MRTK, I'm not sure if MRTK 3 ever came out. There's a lot of good what do you call it, frameworks you can use to cut a lot of this stuff down. I think getting relative positioning and all that stuff may be especially when it comes down to ergonomics and accessibility. I think that's where it's going to be kind of tough. I think things like Meta's SDK and stuff like that would be helpful. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Sima. From what I understand, the UI needs at least to feel as if the UI lives within the world you build and the characters you see in it, and not the only player. Yeah, I think that, as I said before, you can do a mixture of both. Amazing, thanks. Thank you, Fitz. David, since January, they've added a lot, but very limited outside their very literal capabilities for metas. Yeah, I know that they added building blocks recently. I haven't messed with it. It's definitely interesting. I really want to get, and it's gonna be a minute, but I really want to get this AVP Bezier app out to you, because it is. I think when it comes out, it's gonna be a good little V1, a little baby. But the thing that's really amazing about AVP, Apple Vision Pro. Every time I say AVP, I think Aliens versus Predator. Is that everything is kind of, all those building blocks are built on the operating system, so using Windows and volumes and stuff. But for diegetic, this is like they don't walk you, they don't hold your hand. Like it's not everything there is very non-diegetic, and that's because diegetic design and world-based design is hard. Okay, so is this meeting being recorded? Would like to go through it again later. Melissa, are we recording it? Yes. She's the best. Awesome possum. Arkin, I've had a concept that I've been thinking about for a little while. Does the design for the competition have to be completely original for this? No, it doesn't have to be original. No. Don't let originality cap you from doing something. Like if you're gonna copy something, copy it. Well, no, likely that you copied it, but then if you actually tweak something, that's even more important. I think that one of the things, if you want to get a job at like a lot of big companies that hire, what a lot of people do is like, hey, here's what I saw you had, like here's this thing inside of, well, for instance, like I hate Spotify. I think their product is crap. But like, what I would do is that I would probably look at some features and like take this, copy their feature, and then tweak it to solve a use case. And I think a lot of people get hired when you start doing that because you often have to do live critiques and analysis of how you would better a product. And not every product's perfect. Everyone has to make compromises and stuff like that. So if you just take something, copy it, and then like tweak it, I think that's a really good start. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Suma got one? There was about originality in the submission guidelines. Originality, your design must be original and not infringe on any. Yeah, I think we're just trying to cover our ass with that one. Like, I think when it comes down to originality, it's like, don't make Mickey Mouse saying like this is the Disney app, made by Disney. Like if you have Mickey Mouse walk around, no one's gonna care. It's just being like, who's that crazy son of a bitch and head of Disney? I don't want him on my ass. But I think that, just originality is a very vague term. Just go with God and just be responsible. Bunch of people typing. Any thoughts, Melissa? You've been silent the whole time. I heard your voice once.
I'm doing a recording workaround, and when I talk, it echoes, so I'm trying not to talk.
Okay. I like the recording workaround. Any restrictions for using AI? No. But understand that if you're using mesh AI, those things are heavy suckers. So be fair warned that you'll need to optimize your meshes and your materials heavily. You can use it. We can use whatever you want to get the job done. Public, yeah, I know exactly. Mickey Mouse, I love your wrath. Just clarifying, this earlier example about redesigning Spotify is fair game regarding originality. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, it's not like you're not saying this is from Spotify. Like your whole case study would be like, in this case, you'd be like, I'm going to take Spotify and make it diegetic. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of things people do, there's a couple of cliche designs everyone goes to right away. And that's one of them is putting a record player in a room. And I think it's always funny because I see it and it's like kind of pretty, but I'm like, that's cool. I'm not sure how practical that is. I guess it's diegetic. It's cool. I think Greg Madison did a really great diegetic tape player that was just absolutely insane. Like, and I think that in the space, and I'm going to be pumping up Pip here, but Pip and Greg have some of the best diegetic, especially signifiers in a form. Your guys are masters. I wish I had the time and effort to try to even get to your place, but you guys are really good at that stuff. Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Yeah, Greg Madison's stuff is just absolutely killer. Yeah, it's so sick. It is. It is. It's so good. And honestly, a lot of the stuff sometimes he builds it in Headset, and sometimes he builds it just with After Effects, which I think it kind of gets the point across. But we're going to try to put it on device for this one. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts? If you guys have any thoughts, we can raise your hand. You can come on stage and ask us if you want. Okay. Oh, David, there we go. Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to be excited. I'm juice as a goose. Got a bunch of people chatting it up.
I guess it's worth saying there's the talk on the 11th as well from Viva at Project, which is worth coming along to if you want to try and get some tips on how to best design whatever you're designing this month.
Good plug. I need to remember to start doing. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, I need to start getting people pushed into. We need to start plugging more. Yeah, I met her in SF a while ago. She's very cool. How many projects can we submit? Oh, good lord. One. Make it your best one.
You don't submit
it's like, here's a ball. Here's a ball bouncing. Here is that. Yeah, like if it's in Bezier or things that are like, you can just add all of your links if you need to do multiple and split them up until we get a new feature in that will make it a lot easier. Just include context of each link. I'm super new and I don't even know what diegetic design is. Yeah, there's a good video linked in there that explains it. I think that it will become more and more popular over time, for sure. Pip is going crazy. His little fingers are flittering. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. And again, like all of you, twice a week we have coffee talks, late night chats, and we have a whole channel specifically in here for questions around this stuff. You guys can also get feedback on your stuff. If it's XRUX related, you can post it in the XRUX channel. If it's Figma, don't do it. I get very cranky when people put Figma stuff in there. But if it's XR related, you can put your stuff in there. Greg uses plugin pretty heavily. Oh, I never even used that plugin. Okay, now I want to play with that.
It's not well known, but it's very good. I also love Fitz. I love your enthusiasm, but I also love that you typed diabetic instead of diegetic. That's amazing.
the diabetic concept. I'm like, oh, I like the. I guess like you can show your blood sugar on yeah, you can do that. It's
Why
always good. Brilliant, exactly. It's awesome. Yeah, now I need to look at that. Let me open this up for myself so I don't forget about it. Oh, it's another expensive plugin. It's not that bad. I have so many of them.
It's not too bad. I haven't seen many people using it, but it's pretty sick in terms of the UI layouts it gives you.
Oh, that's great. I need to take that for inspiration for my own stuff. $49. Exactly. I mean, plus text. At least, it's not as much like, what was it, Hurricane? I can't. There's some interesting frameworks that I used to play with a lot. I've just been predominantly building product stuff at Bezier, but yeah. Well, we have 15 minutes. If people can keep asking questions, but if no one else has anything else, we can end it early. I appreciate everyone coming and joining us. I think this makes me I just think like it's a great opportunity for us all to come together because you hear a lot of developers out like there's a lot of developers out there, but there's not that many designers in this space. So having people come together and show the world what we can do, I think, and also being able to get exposure for everyone is super important to me. So I really do appreciate you guys' support and jumping in and competing and just having fun with this. Yeah, thank you, Suma. Thank you, Ram. Thank you. Okay, I love all of you. Let's have a good Friday and let's go. Exactly. Okay, sign up for critique and let's have some fun. Peace. Wait, can we have a place where we can see all the submits after? Yes, we will have a place. We will have a place where everyone can look at everyone's work for sure. Okay, take care, everyone.